Hughes from Athens, Ohio.
And speak really loud,
Oh, right.
all the way over the pond to the UK.
Okay, I'm hoping. I wanted to talk about fracking in the food system. The fracking industry forces new threats and unacceptable risks onto businesses that produce and rely on local food. Uncertainty about the safety of food grown close to fracking activity influences customer behavior and reduces viable farmland in Ohio. My bakery and cafe are built upon the strength of Athens' local food economy. A vibrant local food culture has grown over the last few decades, with over 160 farms, food manufacturers, breweries, markets, and restaurants promoting local food and driving business to our region. Our local suppliers are committed to chemical-free agricultural practices and require uncontaminated air and water. Decades of work by local agencies and their partners to clean up old coal-mined areas has increased the acreage of usable farmland and clean water in our area. If fracking activity, including waste transport and storage, contaminates even one of the crucial links in our local food economy, Ohio local food businesses will be tainted by association. Damage to crops and livestock. In 2014, the Monroe County fracking fire that killed 70,000 fish, frogs, and salamanders with fracking industry chemicals were found 5 miles downstream from the explosion. How many farms were affected? And in 2015, in Vienna, Ohio, a frack waste injection well leaked waste into nearby ponds, killing wildlife and affecting a nearby 50-acre farm. There are at least 10 farms within 5 miles of that site. The 2012 Bamberger and Oswald study concludes, quote, exposure to drilling operations strongly affects the health of humans, companion animals, livestock, horses, and wildlife, end quote. Compromised food safety. That same study documented cases where food-producing animals exposed to chemical contaminants from the fracking industry have not been tested before entering the food system. Farms in areas testing positive for air or water contamination from fracking are still producing dairy and meat for human consumption without any testing of the animals or products. These chemicals could appear in milk and meat products made from these animals. Ranchers are not required to prove their livestock are free from fracking contaminants before they're sold, and the USDA inspectors are not looking for them. Denial of information leads to violation of the right to consume non-contaminated food products. Devaluation of farm property. Gas development can lower land property and property values, making resale difficult and leaving farmers stuck with contaminated land that cannot be farmed. I toured Mick Bluebird's Bluebird Farm in Harrison County last summer. He's been farming there for 37 years, and his land is now surrounded by fracking rigs and compressor stations. Several pipeline companies have tried to go through his main production field, and though he's managed to fend them off, they've cut down acres of wood right next to his crops on his property line and located several pipelines there. The noise, smells, and dust from constant industrial activity has destroyed his enjoyment of his property. And if a pipeline is allowed to across his land, it will eliminate acres of rich, productive soil he has worked almost 4 decades to create. Farm property damage. OFA dairy producer James Yoder, who sells his Jersey milk to Horizon, is facing the threat of 2 pipelines crossing his pasture. James is working very hard to make sure he can stay in business as a 4th-generation farmer on the land with his wife and 2 young children. OFA has been advocating on behalf of James since 2015, informing the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission that organic farmers like James should be protected from damaging pipelines. James is concerned he could lose his organic certification. Over 70,000 miles of pipeline for oil and gas are proposed in Ohio to move fracked oil and gas away. Industrial fracking activity is already close to 11% of organic farmland in Ohio, and planned infrastructure will soon be on or adjacent to over 30% of Ohio's organic farms. Deforestation. A 2nd-generation sustainable orchardist in Morgan County who planned to pass the land and business on to the 3rd generation was forced to lose acres of his pine forest, a windbreak for the delicate fruit blossoms of his orchard, to make way for a high-pressure gas pipeline through his property. Another young farmer eager to grow her business is dismayed that the Wayne National Forest is open for fracking and the deforestation that it requires, for she chose land adjacent to the forest specifically to protect her organic acreage. Devaluation of organic certification. In Ohio, which has over 700 certified organic farms, with nearly 57,000 acres of certified organic land, 103 organic farms are located within 3 miles of a fracking well, and 96 organic farms are within 3 miles of a Class II injection well. If it is a human right to have access to clean, safe food, what happens to that right when farmers have no information about what chemicals their soil and water are being exposed to, and how this exposure affects the health and safety of the food they are raising? Spills from fracking infrastructure can particularly jeopardize organic farmers who may lose their certification and suffer direct economic harm due to soil or water contamination from prohibited substances. Water pollution. Many Ohio rural farm properties rely on well water for drinking and irrigation. In New York, rural properties are protected from fracking because the New York Department of Health determined, quote, the current scientific information on fracking is insufficient. Furthermore, it is clear from existing literature and experience that VHF activity has resulted in environmental impacts that are potentially adverse to public health, end quote. Ohio farmers and food consumers deserve the same protections. Livestock and wildlife are attracted to the salty taste of fracking fluids and wastewater. Animal poisoning can result in death or loss of normal reproductive function, stillbirths, birth defects, and other health problems. Ohio Farmers Union, Ohio Sustainable Business Council, and Ohio Ecological Food and Farming Association have all called for an end to the use of Class II injection wells for frack waste. Water scarcity and water price inflation. In farming regions where the water is scarce, municipalities have been selling fresh water to drillers rather than farmers when they can get a higher price. The millions of gallons of water used for fracking is said to be permanently removed from the hydrological cycle, increasing water scarcity. In Central Valley, California, however, wastewater from fracking is then processed and sold to farms for irrigation, even organic farms. Soil pollution and degradation. A Colorado state scientist stated that, quote, the oil and gas boom is a death sentence for the soil, end quote. No state or federal agency has assessed the impact of the fracking boom on soil. Abundant, healthy soil is vital for productive farming. Fracking creates significant disturbance to the land, taking acres of farmland out of production capability. Well pads can be 4 acres or more, etc. In addition to the degradation of farmland in Ohio, degradation of land in the Wayne National Forest from fracking may destroy historical evidence of indigenous food cultures, such as those studied by the Archaeology Department and Food Studies undergraduates at Ohio University. Air pollution. Many chemicals used in the fracking process are hazardous air pollutants, and fracking is a highly industrial process that increases ground level ozone. Ozone damages plants by inhibiting photosynthesis and root development. Soybeans, Ohio's largest commercial crop, are particularly susceptible to yield loss caused by ozone. Other ozone-sensitive crops include beans, spinach, tomato, alfalfa, and pasture. Stunted roots and smaller plants mean a reduction in yield for the farmer. In Ohio, regulations for well siting and gas flaring for farming areas are weaker than for urban areas. Noise and light pollution. Light and noise pollution from fracking wells can increase stress on livestock. A dairy farmer from Harrison County who used to supply my restaurant with cheese reported to me that all her cows only graze at the far fence line of her pasture, the farthest they can get from the industrial activity that now surrounds her farm. She's been in litigation with the pipeline companies that now surround her pasture and cannot speak to me about the situation, but she no longer sells her delicious cheddar, which we used to feature in our menu and in our market. Right to healthy occupational conditions. Farmers near fracking infrastructure or activity lack necessary information on specific chemical exposures. Information cannot be obtained due to the lack of testing, lack of full disclosure, and industry's use of non-disclosure agreements. Farmers in shale regions across the country have documented physical and mental health impairments, loss of livestock, and damaged crops due to exposure to polluted air and water. The stress of having an injection well take in truckload after truckload of hazardous frack waste right next to their organic farm in Athens County caused one of our suppliers to sell off all their livestock and shut down for good. They were unable to stay and grow healthy crops in what they now see as an industrial waste zone. My friend who operates an organic beef ranch in Ashtabula County is now downstream from 2 injection well facilities. She worries that the long-term effects of the injection activity will be on her water and land. Right to participate in the decision-making process. Displacement by the industry is denying farmers their source of nutrition and breaking their symbiotic relationship with their lands. Is it acceptable that a farmer's right to his chosen livelihood, organic farming in a clean, peaceful environment, can be violated if an oil and gas company wants to locate its infrastructure there? Solutions to food and energy security need to come from fair policies that preserve our well-being, not put it at risk. We must be allowed to develop our economy in ways that benefit our own communities now and going forward.
Thank you. Questions? saying they don't have one, I always have one. What, I find it a little confusing that what you're saying, which I believe to be a truth, is that the state of Ohio is putting industrial facilities ahead of what has always been a core economic baseline for the state, which is agriculture and livestock. Is that?
That seems to be true. And when this first came to our area, I wrote to Secretary Vilsack and everybody else I could think of in the federal administration to let them know this was happening, because it didn't seem like it would be possible that they would put their agricultural system in Ohio at risk. I got no response.
Do you know what the ratio is? Income from agriculture versus non-agriculture?
That stays in Ohio? I don't know.
Not if it stays in Ohio, but it's generated in Ohio.
I don't know.
You don't know? That would be important to know.
I do know there, I had a statistic about the total money generated from all food businesses it wasn't in Ohio, it was in the US, far surpasses the oil and gas and coal industries.
Well, my other question is that in the United States, my understanding is that we are actually moving away from large industry sectors as an employment sector, if you will, like the old auto industry or steel industry, all those sort of Rust Belt kind of stuff, and that we are supposed to be embracing these basic smaller industries, whether it's a large farm but small in comparison to the auto industry, obviously, or family farms who are providing products to go to a place like your business that only works with the local as much as possible, and I just find it interesting that Ohio has decided to do this, and there's no recourse.
There doesn't appear to be a recourse. Yeah, I agree. The old model of depending on some big company to come in and provide thousands of jobs to your community doesn't happen anymore. And that's why decades ago in our community we started building a network of small businesses to support ourselves. And we're a model in, throughout the United States. People come, business groups come through Athens and visit the different food businesses that are all connected and, supporting ourselves, showing how it can be done with small business and local food security. So it is very puzzling.
It's very puzzling. So as a restaurant, a food business, are you at all concerned that the livestock you're purchasing, the beef or the pork or the fish, may be contaminated, unbeknownst to both the producer or one rancher who raises it and yourself?
Yeah, I'm very concerned. It's like the thing that I built my business to do, which is buy from local and Ohio farms, is now the thing that puts that food at risk. I'm not buying, although this industry is happening in lots of places, that food is being grown, including California. So, yeah. And I have asked some of my producers from areas that I wonder whether there's fracking going on, and usually I don't get a response. And I wonder whether some of it is due to litigation that they're involved in, like my cheese producer.
So, first of all, thanks for the food. This influx of people like you, producers locally, are you all organized in any way that you have a organization, a service organization, or are you all just on your own communicating?
Oh, no, there are several organizations that many of us participate in. OFA, I think I mentioned, but it stands for Ohio Ecological Food and Farming Association. That's the statewide one that is very, very concerned with all of the fracking and injection well and pipeline activities. And we try to communicate with each other that way, because it seems like some people in these areas feel isolated. But when we try to reach out to other farmers or food businesses that are facing the same thing, we can feel like maybe we can do something together, but so far it's been kind of a dead end going to the state legislature and trying to get support.
So we wouldn't say that you have a lobbyist in the formal sense, would we?
A lobbyist? No, I wouldn't say, actually, but we have done lobbying. I mean, we've tried that, and it's so strange to be in the State House as a person and seeing all those professional lobbyists and what we're up against. But yeah, we do not have any paid lobbyists.
So what happens to the culture of the community if an organic farmer of some sort can no longer be certified organic? What happens to that family, and how many people are impacted? It has to be more than just the family, wouldn't it?
Right.
Economically as
Exactly.
well as culturally and socially, and I mean, there's a big sort of environment out there.
Exactly. I mean, we buy from over 70 farms, and how many people does that farm support? So, yeah, there's a lot of people impacted. And as far as when organic certification is challenged, when you lose that certification, I believe it's 3 years before you can get recertified. So if a farm is selling to, a Whole Foods or even a smaller place like us that's looking primarily for organic produce, that's 3 years of lost sales. What are they, supposed to provide their income with during that time? Well, they wait, for the pollution that they didn't cause that got onto their farm to be cleaned up and recertification to happen.
How does that work, that they would be discovered to their food or their livestock would be contaminated?
Well, this is a big issue right now, and the National Organic Standards Board is looking into this at the request of farmers on the ground in fracking areas, because right now I don't believe that it's being looked at. And that's why, it's like, do we want to tell people that there's fracking near our farm and risk losing certification and risk losing customers? If we tell, are we going to get protection? Are we going to get help? Or are we going to get, like in New York, there was a food co-op that said, we're not going to buy from farms that have fracking near them. And I said that at an event one, and everybody's like, yay, yeah, don't buy from those farms. And I'm like, no, what about the farmer? What about the livelihood? What about the people doing the good work of raising clean food for you? So the impact is almost unbelievable.
But they wouldn't go and sell that product, grow that product again, and sell it to a non-organic? Is there any way to know that? I mean, would they?
They may try to, building a business takes time and
Right.
connections, and maybe they could find another supplier, how do they explain that? I've got this food that may or may not be contaminated, you want to buy it. But no, it takes years to build the relationships and the purchasing agreements that you have connections with. It would certainly not be easy. If they did have a buyer, it would certainly be at a loss, I would think. And their reputation is at stake.
So are there, when I was in North Carolina recently, there was a sweet potato farmer, and the pipeline was too close to his property, and so he could not harvest his field. Sweet potatoes are quite heavy in the harvesting process. And so that was a problem. Is that also a problem? Not sweet potatoes, obviously, but is that also a problem when you were saying how the cattle were all at one end of the pasture and not using the entire field that they had available? Are there other problems like that are happening today?
Definitely. The impact, even if the animals are allowed to graze on land that's been disturbed and, what do they say? Reclaimed. It's not just dirt, it's soil, it's, layers, years of work building that rich soil, and that's the soil that contributes to the health of the grasses and the pasture for the animals. So it's not just that the cows might be avoiding the sight of the pipeline, they are probably noticing that the grass over there doesn't taste very sweet because there's not a lot of nutrients in that soil.
Mhm, mhm.
So it's the loss of cropland no matter what they do to reclaim it.